Okay, now we're gonna get into what's going on this land, to why all this corruption is going on. And once again, I'm just providing information that can be easily found. This is not no in-depth study. All this stuff right here can be found on the internet. World Newsstand Act of 1871. 1871, February 21st, Congress passes an act to provide a government for the District of Columbia, also known as the Act of 1871. With no constitutional authority to do so, Congress creates a separate form of government for the District of Columbia, a 10-mile square parcel of land. See Acts of 41st Congress, Section 34, Section 3, Chapter 61 and 62. The act passed when the country was weakened and financially depleted in the aftermath of the Civil War. Was a strategic move by foreign interest international bankers who were intent upon gaining a stranglehold on the coffers and neck of America. Congress cut a deal with the international bankers, specifically Rothschilds of London, to incur a debt to said bankers because the bankers were not about to lend money to a floundering nation without serious stipulations. They devised a way to get their foot in the door of the United States. The Act of 1871 formed a corporation called the United States in all caps. The corporation owned by foreign interests moved in and shoved the original Constitution into a dustbin. With the Act of 1871, the organic Constitution was defaced, in effect vandalized and sabotaged. When the title was capitalized and the word "for" was changed to "of" in the title. The Constitution of the United States of America in all capital letters is the Constitution of the Incorporated United States of America. It operates in an economic capacity and has been used to fool the people into thinking it governs the republic. It does not. Capitalization is not significant when one is referring to a legal document. This seemingly minor alteration has had a major impact on every subsequent generation of Americans. What Congress did by passing the Act of 1871 was create an entirely new document, a constitution for the government of the District of Columbia, an incorporated government. Newly altered Constitution was not intended to benefit the Republic. It benefits only the corporation of the United States of America and operates entirely outside the original organic Constitution. Instead of having the absolute and unalienable right guaranteed under our organic Constitution, and they say we the people, now have relative rights or privileges. One example is the sovereign's right to travel, which has now been transformed under a corporate government policy into a privilege that requires citizens to be licensed. Passports by passing the Act of 1871, Congress committed treason. I'm not saying this stuff. This is just information I'm providing that is on the internet. This is not for my own mind or construction. All rights reserved. Congress committed treason against the people who were sovereign under the grants and decrees of the Declaration of Independence and the organic Constitution. Information courtesy of Lisa Gilani, www.babelmagazine.com. The Act of 1871 became the foundation of all the treason since committed by the government officials. And based on this information, that's why I believe their Pope came forth and told the people the truth, that all E-states and S-states has been given back to the people, and all these things that are acting as official on the land do not have authority. Like I said, I don't know the man personally. I hear a lot of things about him, but I can't say out of my heart and my mind that this is true, because I don't know him. Just like I don't want nobody defaming me. But, so a lot of people say a lot of certain things. I don't say it because I don't know it for fact. But, because there's been a lot of lies been told. So I'll just say this is what has been said, because I don't have personal knowledge of that, of myself, other than what I've been told. May be true, may not be true. But he's not my head, he's their head. And he's the head of the corporations. and he's given decree that all these things are not right on the land and they shouldn't be, and he's basically saying the same thing that this thing is saying. And like he said, only entity on the land that should be operating is the marshals in their proper capacity, being over the mail. Then it said Dove. The following is an explanation of further explanation of the above, an adaptation of Lisa's work done with her permission, which you may want to read for your own edification, whereas my chapter 9 is a time map of the major headlines and landmines of the 200 years plus history of America. Then it goes on to say the United States isn't a country, it's a corporation. In preparation for stealing America, the puppet of Britain banking cable had already created a second government, a shadow government besides, to manage what the common herd believed was a democracy, but really was an incorporated United States. Together with Chimera, this two-headed monster disallowed the common herd of all rights of sojourners, you and in your sovereignty. Congress, with no authority to do so, created a separate form of government, the District of Columbia. Okay, so you get the gist of that. You can look that up if you want. Then I'll go on to this other document called the government. You can look this up too. It's called The Government Have Descended to the Level of Mere Private Corporations. Supreme Court Building, Clearfield Doctrine. Supreme Court annotated, let me read that right. Supreme Court annotated statute. Clearfield Trust Company versus United States 318 U.S. 363-371 1942. Whereas defined pursuant to the Supreme Court and annotated statute Clearfield Doctrine Company versus United States 318 U.S. 363-371 1942, governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen. Where private corporate commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, and securities checks is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from the government. What the Clearfield Doctrine is saying is that when private commercial paper is used by corporate government, then the government loses its sovereignty status and becomes no different than a mere private corporation. And also, I'm just throw this in there, if you look this up, the United States bankruptcy of 1933 also is intertwined with the Clearfield Doctrine. Once the United States company started using fiat currency and all those things like that, they dropped, and of course when the corporation was not legitimate anyway, for the purpose of being a government. But then once that happened, the people basically became the creditors and not the debtors in reality. You can look that up too. For the purpose of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from the government. So what the Clearfield Doctrine is saying is that when a private commercial paper is used by a corporate government, then the government loses its sovereignty status and becomes no different than a mere private corporation. And that's why I would say if you go to, they're basically, in truth, they're basically the same as going to Walmart, Kmart, the grocery store, different things, same thing. And you can get angry, but I didn't write this. As such, government then becomes bound by the rules and laws that govern private corporations, which means that if they intend to compel an individual to some specific performance based upon its corporate status or corporate rules, then the government, they're not the government. Like any private corporation, must be the holder in due course of a contract and other commercial agreements between it and upon whose demands for specific performance are made. And also, I might add that full disclosure must be given in order for a contract to be valid. At any time, if somebody deceives someone, a man or a woman, because a corporation cannot be deceived. the contract is null and void from the outset. And further, let me see. And further, the government must be willing to enter a contract or commercial agreement into evidence before trying to get the court to enforce its demands, called statutes. And once again, Bouvier Law Dictionary says, taking the law, only objects are subject to civil, penal, and criminal codes. So once again, the Ibri Moor people cannot be subject to these things on this land. All right, let me move on.